Welcome back, sugar. I just want to let you know that I really appreciate the love you give me when you listen to my chronicles. It touches my heart that you enjoy the drama I bring to you. And with that being said, I will continue to give you what you came for, just without you having to watch me sip my champagne as I narrate these chronicles. Now, without further ado, I shall continue. Now, before we get into tonight's story, let me remind y'all where things left off. Nina had been digging deeper into the shooting outside the nightclub. What first looked like a random parking lot fight turned out to be something much bigger. She discovered that Simone may not have just been standing in the wrong place at the wrong time. The deeper Nina looked, the more the story kept leading back to Trayvon. And from Trayvon to Bruce, a man quietly building power across the city. Then things escalated. Someone got into Nina's condo and left a warning on her laptop. Stop digging. Simone started seeing the same black sedan outside the club. Michelle admitted Trayvon had been acting strange and whispering Bruce's name on the phone. Men put their hands on Simone in a parking lot and told her to warn her sister to stop asking questions. Then Nina followed one of Bruce's routes to a warehouse. And what she saw there changed everything. People being moved through the city like cargo. When Bruce realized somebody had been watching, he didn't shut Nina down, he set a trap. And when Nina stepped into it, Bruce welcomed her into the game. But Nina made one thing clear. He had picked the wrong player. Now, with that being said, let's continue the story. Nina sat in front of her laptop with the nightclub footage open on the screen again. The fight, the shouting, the crowd spilling outside, the gunshot. She had watched it so many times by now that every movement should have felt familiar. But this time she wasn't watching the people. She was watching the edges, the parts of the frame everyone else ignores, the back gate, the alley, the delivery lane behind the club. She dragged the footage back 10 seconds, then 20, then slowed it down frame by frame, and that's when she saw it. A dark SUV pulling quietly out of the back alley behind the club. No panic, no sudden turn, no reaction to the chaos building inside. Just smooth, deliberate, like it had somewhere important to be. Nina paused the screen, zoomed in. The plate was only half visible, but the timing told her everything she needed to know. That SUV rolled out before the gun went off, before people started screaming, before everyone's attention shifted to the parking lot. Nina leaned back slowly in her chair because now the shape of that night was changing again. The fight wasn't the main event. The shooting wasn't the main event. The chaos had been cover, and whatever was inside that SUV was the real reason everything happened. Across town, Bruce stood in front of the windows in his office, hands folded behind his back, looking down at the city like it belonged to him. Maybe part of it did. Teddy sat in a chair near the desk, bouncing one knee. You really think she's still pushing? Bruce didn't turn around. Of course she is. Teddy shook his head. Then why let her? Bruce smiled faintly at the glass. Because people tell you more when they think they're figuring something out on their own. Teddy looked confused. Bruce finally turned. And if she's smart, she'll show me where the real pressure points are. Teddy frowned. You talk about her like she's useful. Bruce's expression didn't change. Everybody's useful for the right amount of time. Simone was back at the club, but she wasn't seeing it the same way anymore. Once you know something is wrong, you stop moving through a place the same way. You start noticing things, patterns, silences, the way security guards stand a little too close to certain doors, the way certain guests never wait in line, the way some girls go into VIP and don't come back out through the same hallway. That night, she stood in the booth with one hand on the mixer and one eye on the room. The music still hit, the crowd still moved, but Simone's stomach stayed tight because for the first time, she wasn't just working the room, she was studying it. Halfway through her set, she saw one of the floor managers escort a young woman toward the private lounge near the back corridor. The woman looked nervous, not drunk, not excited, nervous. Simone watched until they disappeared behind the door. Then one of the security guards stepped into place outside it, not casually, like he had a reason to be there. Simone's fingers tightened against the booth because now Nina's warnings didn't sound paranoid anymore. Now they sounded late. Later that night, Kai sat alone in his car with a laptop open and a notebook beside him. He had already checked 3 route logs and 2 warehouse schedules. The same company names kept circling back through different paths, different paperwork, same movement, same pattern. He tapped a pen against the steering wheel and stared at a row of timestamps. Then his expression changed because one of the transport records lined up almost perfectly with the same night Jalen died. Kai looked at it once, then again. The route wasn't front facing. It wasn't meant for regular inventory. It was back lane movement, private transfer. He sat back and exhaled through his nose because if he was reading this right, then what happened at the club wasn't just covered. It had been timed, planned, and Jalen had gotten caught in the middle of something much bigger than a nightclub problem. Kai looked down at his phone, then at Nina's name. He didn't call, not yet, because he still wasn't ready to show her everything he knew, but now he knew something for sure. She wasn't chasing shadows, she was getting close. Too close. The next afternoon, Nina went to see Michelle again, not in the boutique this time, at a small cafe 2 blocks away where people mostly minded their own business. Michelle looked tired the moment she sat down, eyes heavy, shoulders tense, like sleep had been leaving her in pieces. Nina didn't waste time. Has Trayvon been using the club for meetings? Michelle's eyes widened. What? The club? Has he been there? Michelle looked away. Sometimes. With who? I don't know. Nina held her gaze. Michelle swallowed hard. I've seen him there after hours. Not partying, not drinking, just talking to people. What kind of people? Michelle's voice dropped. The kind of people who don't look like they're there for fun. Nina said nothing. Michelle leaned forward and lowered her voice even more. One night, I followed him. Nina's expression stayed still, but every part of her sharpened. To where? Michelle hesitated, then whispered it. The back lot behind the club. There was a black SUV waiting. Nina's heartbeat kicked once, hard, then steady, because now the vehicle in the footage wasn't just a random clue anymore. It had a witness, and that witness was Michelle. Now, right here is where the story starts turning because Nina had the footage, Michelle had seen the SUV in person, Kai had route records tied to that same night, and none of them had even started comparing notes yet. That meant the truth wasn't just close, it was circling them from 3 different directions. That evening, Nina sat across from Kai in a quiet booth at a diner near the edge of the city. Nothing fancy, just bad coffee, chip mugs, and people too tired to care who was talking to who. Nina studied him for a long moment before she said anything. You knew more than you told me. Kai didn't deny it. I knew enough to be careful. You also knew enough to find me. Kai leaned back slightly. You're not hard to find when you start pulling on the same wires I've been watching for 2 years. Nina's eyes narrowed. Then tell me what you've been watching. Kai was quiet for a second. Then he said it. The club. Nina didn't move. Kai continued. It isn't just a club. It's a meeting point. A filter, a place where certain people can look around without looking obvious. Nina's voice stayed calm. For what? Kai looked at her. For people. Silence sat between them for a second. Not because Nina didn't understand, because she did. Kai lowered his voice. Some get approached, some get watched, some get moved. Nina's face changed just slightly, not shock, confirmation, because now the thing she had seen at the warehouse had found its way back to the club. And that meant the club wasn't adjacent to the operation, it was part of it. Nina asked the next question quietly. How long have you known? Kai looked down at the table. Long enough to know you don't go charging in blind. Nina's eyes stayed on him. So that's why you kept half the truth to yourself. Kai met her gaze again. That's why you're still alive. Across town, Bruce sat at the head of a long table in a private room above one of his businesses. 3 men sat near him, paperwork spread out in front of them. No raised voices, no panic, just controlled conversation. One of the men slid a photo across the table. Bruce picked it up. Nina leaving the diner, Kai's car in the background. Bruce looked at the image for a moment and smiled without humor. Well now, one of the men spoke carefully. You want us to deal with him? Bruce set the photo down. No, not yet. He folded his hands. Let them build trust first. That room went quiet because everyone there understood what that meant. Bruce wasn't interested in stopping Nina quickly. He was interested in letting her connections reveal themselves, and Kai had just become one of them. Later that night, Simone stayed after the club closed, not because she had work left, because she wanted to see what happened when the music stopped. The place felt different, empty, less glamorous, more honest. She moved carefully past the bar and toward the back hall, the same hallway she'd been watching all week. The same one security always hovered near. She waited until the floor manager walked off, then slipped down the corridor. At the far end was a heavy door she had never seen open. No sign, no label, just a keypad and a camera above it. Simone stepped closer. That's when she heard voices on the other side. Male voices. One of them sounded familiar. She held her breath and listened. Then she heard it. Trayvon, clear as day. Simone stepped back so fast she nearly tripped. Because if Trayvon was behind that door, then Michelle had been telling the truth. And whatever was happening in that room had everything to do with the same night Jalen died. Nina was just pulling into her building when her phone rang. Simone, the second she answered, she knew something was wrong. Simone's voice was low and sharp. Nina straightened in the driver's seat.
Where?
At the club, in the back. I heard him. Nina closed her eyes for 1 second, then opened them.
Leave.
Simone hesitated. Leave now. That tone was enough. Simone didn't argue again, but before she hung up, she said one more thing.
There's a room back here. The kind people hide things in.
Nina's grip tightened around the steering wheel because now the club wasn't just a theory anymore. Now it had a hidden room. And Trayvon was inside it. Bruce stood alone in his office near midnight, looking at the city again, the same way some men look at land they think they own. He checked a message on his phone. Trayvon had sent 3 words. She was here. Bruce smiled faintly, then typed back only 3 words also. Let her wonder. And that right there was the kind of line that tells you what kind of man Bruce really is. Because confusion can be more dangerous than fear. And Bruce knew exactly how to use both. By the time Nina got upstairs to her condo, she already knew she wasn't sleeping. She pulled up the nightclub footage again. The SUV, the alley, the timestamps, then opened the route records Kai had hinted at, then wrote down what Michelle had said, then added Simone's new piece about the hidden room. By 3 in the morning, the shape of the truth was finally starting to come together. The club, the SUV, Trayvon, the back room, the transfer, and beneath all of it, Bruce. Nina stared at the board she had built across her desk, then said quietly to herself, it wasn't just cover, it was a pickup. And suddenly the whole night Jalen died became something else entirely. Not a random tragedy, not even a failed hit, a planned movement, interrupted by chaos that got messier than it was supposed to, which meant someone somewhere was still missing what they came for. And if that someone was important enough, they might still be looking. Now let me ask y'all something in the comments. Do you think the club was only a meeting point, or do you think it's been part of the operation the whole time? Don't forget to like the video, comment, and subscribe, because baby, the streets always got another story.